going to take y'all on a very real week. Now that's not to say that all of the previous videos I've shown are not real life. They are. But this week was one of those just really busy weeks where I did not have as much time to do the fun projects as I sometimes show. I did do a few, but first I told myself you cannot do anything fun until you get this house cleaned up. So the first stop on cleaning this house was in the dining room. This is where a lot of my projects take place. I don't have a separate sewing room or craft room or anything like that, and so a lot of times I am just right here at this dining room table sewing or working on my soap or sitting out my other baked goodies to cool. And so this needed a bit of a deep cleaning. I moved the table out, swept and mopped underneath it, wiped down the table, and then put it all back together. Then we moved on to the living room. Now, I'm not saying that I didn't clean before I started filming this. I picked up the toys and any of the laundry got put away that was out. But that's not something y'all want to see, is my messiness. And so I did a bit of cleaning, and then I would just video as I did some of the prettier moments of cleaning up this mess that I call a house. Then I have a very clingy baby right now, a little baby boy, and so he gets toted around on Mama's hip while she vacuums. I was never good at multitasking until I had children, and that's not to say that I am now, but I do it a lot better now because there is no choice. You just have to do it. So sometimes that is just what it takes to get these chores done. I went to dig out I have a stash of antique dish sets and teapots and things that I like to keep, but I keep them put away because I don't have a big enough kitchen to store it all. I don't have room for any kind of hutch to store it in. And I was digging around for something else. I actually don't even remember what it was anymore. But I was digging around for something else, and I ran across these Corelle mugs and a butter dish that I had stashed away, and the mugs match our Corelle plates that we use every day. For every day we only really use Corelle. I've collected it from hand-me-downs and thrift shops and antique shops, and so I pulled those out because I didn't realize that I'd even had them, and so I thought that would be nice to go up in the cabinet to match our other dishes that we already have in there. Now we got the cleaning out of the way. We do that first because there's no sense in decorating a dirty house. And I decided I wanted to change out my plates. I wanted to kind of mix and match some more. I'm not totally happy with this layout. It's a little bit too much white. And I want to do kind of more of a mismatch and not so uniform plate wall here. So as I antique or thrift some more plates, I will add them, change them out, and maybe even do a different style of design here. But for today, this gave a little refresh to the space that it really needed. Now let's talk the fun part of this video. Y'all all know I'm a sucker for a good apron. I buy them all the time at antique shops. I sew them all the time. We as in my mom and I, we have a little sewing shop that we do on the side where we sew aprons and sew them. And so here I was trying out a new style of apron. We are offering this one in our sewing shop, but I was trying this out. I keep seeing everybody with these ruffled long aprons, and normally they're more of a crossback or a pinafore kind of style, but I wanted my standard ties. All of our full aprons, I should say, tie around the neck so that you can adjust it, and tie around the waist. I like that because I can tie little bows, and I think it looks really pretty, and so that's how we do all of ours. So I wanted to stick with that style but have that long gathered bottom to the apron, and so I am trying that out here. I took 2 aprons. One was my classic apron that we sell. It's just a straight standard apron, and then took one that was kind of this style that my grandmother had made many years ago, and based my pattern off of that, kind of used that as a pattern, and I kind of made it just a little bit bigger and much longer and sewed that. So basically the short version of this, because it would take far too much time to tell you in detail how I sew these, I'm always willing to share how I sew things or make things or recipes or whatever. I don't keep that to myself, even though I sell these items. I'm willing to share those, but it would take more time than I can do in this video. In short, I cut out all my pieces. I had 2 top pieces, so the top is lined. I had 3 pieces for the waist strap, 1 piece for the bottom of the apron, and then 2 pieces for the top straps. I sewed my top straps together, turned them out, and then top stitched them all the way around to make a nice pretty strap. And then I put them in between the top pieces so that I can sew them into it. They go in towards it, so in towards the inside, and the top of the apron pieces go right sides together. And then you sew all the way around that except for the bottom side that's going to attach to the waist portion. I have had many blogs previously, and it's just not something that I've really stuck with, blogging all of these projects. It takes a lot of time to write it out, and there's a lot that goes into blogging that you wouldn't always realize unless you're doing it to get views to your blog, and that's normally where I kept tutorials and recipes written down. So I may have to look into something like that in the future so that I have somewhere to send y'all if you want the full, really detailed instructions somewhere that's not right over the top of the video, because a lot of times I run out of talking time so that this video is not, an hour long, because I could talk forever. I don't have any problem with that. That's why I like making these videos, because I get to just chat, but I know that's hard to follow and not always helpful. So eventually I will maybe get back into that where I can send y'all to the printable version with the detailed instructions for recipes and sewing tutorials and soap and all of that. But for now, I just don't have the time to do that. But I'll do my best, and if you have any questions, you can always get a hold of me on Facebook or Instagram or even TikTok. Once I had that, I set that to the side, and then I start working on my waist portion. For this, I just sewed my 3 pieces. There's a middle section that's shorter and 2 side pieces of the waistband. Sewed them together into one long string, and then I ironed them over kind of like bias tape. I gathered the bottom portion of my apron and hemmed the bottom of it. To gather it, you can make ruffles by turning your tension all the way up, your stitch length as long as possible, and it'll automatically gather it. Then I just sandwiched that in between the waistband. I top stitched everything, and then just top stitched the top to the waistband, and there is the finished apron. Naturally, I had to go out in one of our pastures and pick some wildflowers. We have this whole part of our pasture that we don't mow, we don't hay it. Sometimes we put the milk goats out here and they will help eat it down. But I had to go out and pick some of these wildflowers. I've been picking these a few times for flower arrangements until we have our own blooms, which are coming. But they are just too pretty not to go pick. And as it goes, every day the routines start over. Every day I have to make the bed and clean the floors and wipe down the counters and the table. And so that is just what you're getting this week. I have been selling at our local farmers market, and it has taken a lot of time. The kiddos really need me right now, and so I'm showing y'all real life. That's the point of these videos. I'm not here to pretend like I have this glamorous or easy-going life. Sometimes the kids are needy, and all I can get done is the housework, and that's okay. So here I am. I'm just going to take you along for that. We still have our green, bright green bedding. I really like it. I think it has a really country look to it, even though it is brightly colored. In our tan bedroom with our antique furniture. If you haven't watched a video before, or if you haven't seen the ones where I've shown our room is mostly antique furniture. Our entire house is mostly antique furniture or hand-me-downs. Our bed is an old rice bed that we found on Facebook Marketplace. I have a hutch for the baby in here that was my grandfather's, and I love it so much. We don't keep a lot in our bedroom, but here's the hutch. And then I have an antique chest at the end of our bed. Our crib is in here for our little boy. He is probably going to be moving into his own room soon, but for now he is still with us, and so we have all of his stuff, and his stuff stays in this hutch. All of his clothes that are too big or too small, all of his diapers that are too big or too small, all of it. Anything that he's not currently in. And then I have this basket here, this green one that has his clothes that currently fit him, which a lot of them stay in the wash. He doesn't have a lot of clothes. I don't keep a lot of clothes for him. So a lot of times we were pulling them straight out of the dryer for him to wear. So this room gets heavily used, and it is difficult to keep it clean if I don't keep it minimal. Now I've shared a few times our chicken coop that we've been working on in our barn. We will have multiple eventually, but this is the first one that we're doing a big overhaul on. We have a family farm with my parents, and so we're kind of on both sides of the property, and so we will have multiple barns and things to keep up with our milk animals, our meat animals, our laying hens, all of that. But my dad built this new brooder, which was awesome. We have a ton of chicks in there. I've got chicks hatching. We've got a broody hen sitting.
Eggs are hiding.
And so we needed this big old brooder, and he built that. He came up with the idea and built it. He's really good at building anything. He built my milk stand, if you saw that a while back. And so he built this, and we're really, really loving it. My best seller at the market and with my online sales of bread in my bake shop is this cheesy jalapeno bread. My mom had this idea to make this, for me to make this. It's just my regular bread, but it is filled with garden jalapenos from our garden and cubed and shredded cheese. And so I made it for one market, and it sold out very quickly, and I had people coming to buy it, and I didn't have any more, and so I was taking orders for it. And so I took it to a second market. It sold out there as well, and I ended up having to take orders for it. And so I'm going to go ahead and show y'all that. It is the same bread recipe I've made a million times. We'll see, 1.5 cups of milk, 2 eggs, 1/2 cup of melted butter, 1/4 cup of sugar, 4.5 teaspoons of yeast, 5 to 6 cups of flour, and 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I have it memorized, y'all. I make this so often. It is my absolute favorite bread recipe. I use the same recipe and do some minor adjustments for burger buns, yeast rolls, hot dog buns, any of my flavored breads. Any of my yeast breads are probably based off of this recipe and just tweaked a little bit. It does make 2 loaves, so make sure you account for that if you're going to make it. You just throw everything together, knead it until it passes the window pane test. And I like to use my stand mixer. It does do a lot better in a stand mixer with the dough hook. I prefer to use buttermilk, but I've been using our goat's milk because I just have so much of it. And so that's really good too. You let that rise. You can throw that in the fridge for several hours overnight to let it rise, and it'll do just fine in there and rise perfectly. Or you can leave it out on the counter for an hour or two, or in your oven turned off with the light on. It will get nice and big and fluffy. And then here I'm doing a round and a loaf. I definitely prefer the loaves though. So once it puffs up, you punch it down and shape it however you will. I like to roll out the dough and then roll it up into the loaf pan, or do the traditional round. This time I added the cheese and the jalapenos in when I first made the dough, so when I'm adding the flour and all of that in. But I have also tried adding it like you would cinnamon rolls, rolling out the dough, adding the cheese and the jalapeno, and then rolling it up. That does well also. He had a string in his mouth earlier. Let this rise again, whether it's the round or the loaf, until it has doubled once again. I like my loaves to kind of come up over the top of the pan and kind of puff out on the side. They get really, really big, and I like that. I feel like you're really getting a good sandwich loaf there when you let it rise that much. It's really soft and fluffy. So you just put that back in a warm spot, cover it up, and it will get nice and big. Bake it at 375 degrees until nice and brown, and then slather it in butter. You have a cheesy jalapeno sandwich bread.